Like the advance of a hurricane, I attacked the city, and like the onset of a storm, I destroyed it. Its inhabitants, young and old alike, were not pardoned, and I filled the streets of the city with their bodies. I devastated, destroyed, and set fire to the city, its houses from their foundations to their roofs, so that in future days, the site of its temples would not be identifiable. I completely destroyed it with water and converted the city to pasture. I reduced Babylon to dust to appease the heart of Ashur, my lord, so that the people would bow down in submission before his great power. Assyria, Art and Empire. In many ways, the words of Sennacherib really define the essence of Assyria, a warlike nation located in the north of Mesopotamia, a Greek word meaning between rivers, referring to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This great empire ruled from around 900 BC until the end of the 7th century BC.
Well, the Assyrians we can understand really from the mid-3rd millennium, from around 2500 BC, when their city of Ashur, which was the heartland of Assyria, was developed as a major urban center.
Assyria was very much influenced indeed by the previous civilizations of southern Mesopotamia. In fact, to some extent, it's all part and parcel of the same culture, which can be called Mesopotamian. It's just that there's a northern expression of this civilization called Assyrian and a southern expression which is called Babylonian. But the cultural connections between the two areas are indeed very close, and the language and the script, for example, are more or less the same. It's just that in different periods of time, Mesopotamia was either controlled from the north, from Ashur or from Nineveh, or from the south.
The Assyrian Empire reached its peak in the first half of the 7th century under Esarhaddon, son of Sennacherib, who conquered Egypt and sacked the city of Memphis. Ashurbanipal was the last of the great Assyrian kings. Just over 20 years later, the Assyrian Empire would be destroyed. The Babylonians, together with the Medes, a warlike people from Iran, destroyed first the city of Ashur and then the great city of Nineveh, the news of which was reported with great joy by the prophets in the Bible. O King of Assyria, your shepherds slumber, your nobles lie still. Your people are scattered on the mountains with no one to gather them. Nothing can heal your wound. Your injury is fatal. All who hear this news of you clap their hands at your fall, for who has not suffered your endless cruelty? Centuries of domination and war, power and cruelty, but also of culture. The remains of the greatest empire of its time are on display here in Mark, the Archaeological Museum of Alicante. Winner of the Best European Museum Award in 2004. 4 galleries with more than 200 objects, along with original documents of the first archaeologists, represent the true legacy of an empire. The British Museum, with the greatest Assyrian collection outside of Iraq, has arrived in Alicante. Together, they have opened the magnificent gates of history to reveal the treasures of a civilization. Assyria, Art and Empire.
Yeah, I think this exhibition is really important in that it focuses on the cultural heritage of Assyria, or Mesopotamia in general, and in Assyria in particular. And this is the finest collection of Assyrian material in the world here in the British Museum. Well, first of all, there are some wonderful Assyrian reliefs, stone reliefs. All of the major Assyrian palaces at Nimrud, Nineveh and Khorsabad were decorated with carved stone panels showing the exploits of the king or the king sitting in state. And these are the most famous relics to survive from the Assyrian period. And there are some wonderful examples in the exhibition. In particular, we can see pictures of Ashurnasirpal hunting lions and bulls, and the Assyrian kings sitting in state. And a particularly famous series is the wars against the Elamites in southwestern Iran, undertaken by the king Ashurbanipal. And then, apart from these wonderful stone reliefs, there are also some quite spectacular small objects. There are two that I draw your attention to in particular. One is an ivory panel, which shows a lioness attacking an African in a papyrus. Another very famous piece in the museum is a glass vase with an inscription on it giving the name of the Assyrian king Sargon. And this was a glass vase that was cast in antiquity, and it's one of the earliest and most famous examples of glass casting. Apart from that, there are cuneiform tablets about the history and literature of Assyria, and there's a range of other very interesting small objects. Well, I have to say that some of the best artifacts in the British Museum collection are included in this exhibition, but there are some which, for one reason or another, it wasn't possible to send. A particularly famous piece is the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III, which is an iconic piece for the art history and the history of Assyria. And then in terms of the stone wall reliefs, probably the most famous series is those showing the lion hunt of Ashurbanipal. But there is actually one piece from that series which is in the exhibition. It shows lions being released from a cage so that the king can hunt them. But the actual culmination of the series, the dying lioness and the king shooting lions from his chariot, is not included in the exhibition. There is, however, in the exhibition one small piece which is very famous, and that's the piece called The Dying Lion. That actually is in the exhibition.
Assyria's greatness, before and after its decline, was kept alive by neighboring cultures. Its power and the achievements of its armies are mentioned in hundreds of ancient historical sources, especially the Bible. Isaiah describes the fearsome Assyrian army in this way: "None shall be weary, nor stumble among them. None shall slumber nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Whose arrows are sharp, and all their bows bent. Their horses' hooves shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. They shall roar like young lions, lay hold on the prey, and carry it away safe, and there shall be none to take it away."
Well, certainly when you look at some of the reliefs, you see scenes of brutal slaughter in war and the terrible suffering of animals in the hunt. But all these scenes are really designed to show the king as the great hunter, the mighty warrior, and he's supported by the gods, and it is through the gods that he achieves his great victories.
Until the 19th century, Assyria was just a destination for travelers and explorers who provide us with a few descriptions of its lands. The British Orientalist Claudius J. Rich was the first person to study the ruins of ancient Nineveh in 1820 to 1821. But the true pioneers were the French consul, Paul-Émile Botta, and the Englishman, Sir Austin Henry Layard. Botta began his excavations in Nineveh in 1842, whilst at the same time Layard excavated in Nimrud. Botta discovered the palace of King Sargon II in Horsabad, and Layard uncovered the palace of Ashur-nasirpal II and the famous black obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Layard also excavated in Nineveh and discovered the palace of Sennacherib with its magnificent reliefs. During the autumn of 1839 and the winter of 1840, I began wandering through Asia Minor and Syria, scarcely leaving untrod one spot hallowed by tradition or unvisited one ruin consecrated by history. I now felt an irresistible desire to penetrate to the regions beyond the Euphrates. A deep mystery hangs over Assyria, Babylonia, and Chaldea. With these names are linked great nations and great cities dimly shadowed forth in history. From 1855, the archaeological work in Assyria slowed down. In Nineveh, the famous reliefs of lion hunts were found in Ashurbanipal's palace. But between 1878 and 1882, the splendid embossed and engraved bronze bands that decorated a wooden door were found in Balawat. But Assyria was not just a warlike nation. It was also a cultured civilization with a great interest in science and the arts. Ashur was the principal god, but there were also other important gods such as Nabu, the god of writing and the scribes, Adad, the god of storms, and Shamash, the sun god.
Well, we don't know very much about what the Mesopotamians believed about the afterlife. We have some poetic accounts of a very gloomy, dull place in the underworld where the dead eat mud and drink muddy water, just like a dead body would in the soil. And it's likely that the Assyrians had the same general idea of the afterlife. So most Mesopotamians, it seemed, focused on the living world. But nonetheless, it's likely that some parts of the different communities within Assyria, within Mesopotamia, had different belief systems. And in Assyria, of course, we have extraordinary evidence for the queens of Assyria when they were buried with immense riches in royal tombs at Nimrud, which suggests perhaps that they thought they may be going to another world where they could continue to use these wonderful objects.
On looking back upon the few months that I had passed in Assyria, I could not but feel some satisfaction. Scarcely a year before, with the exception of the ruins of Horsabad, not one Assyrian monument was known. Without the evidence that these monuments afford, we might almost have doubted that the great Nineveh ever existed. So completely has she become a desert and a wasteland.
Well, of course, the situation at the moment is very bleak and depressing. The Iraq Museum is closed, and so is the museum in Mosul, and we don't exactly know what has happened to the main Assyrian sites. As far as I know, there hasn't been much damage at Nimrud and Nineveh. So what we must do is look forward to a day when the situation stabilizes and it is again possible to visit these places and to make sure that these treasures, which belong to really the whole cultural heritage of the world, can be properly looked after and appreciated again.
The sun sets on a civilization, and centuries have passed by. Fortunately for us, time has preserved many remains, including the important cuneiform writing of this once great culture. the shifting sands of time have preserved its rich legacy. This exhibition has traveled a short distance from the British Museum, but the essence has not been changed. Today, Mark exhibits this legacy to us in its purest form. Passing through its galleries, the words of the prophet can still be heard. Behold, Assyria was like a cedar in Lebanon, of a high stature and with fair branches that shaded the forest. Its height was exalted above all the trees of the field. All the birds made their nests in its boughs, and under its shadow lived all the beasts of the fields. A tree carved more than 2,600 years ago.